After signing Xander Bogaerts, the Padres are now over the luxury tax threshold. Could the Mariners take advantage to shore up their rotation? Plus, JD Martinez is in Seattle right now, but is it to meet with the Mariners? And given the way the starting pitching market has unfolded, are Chris Flexen and Marco Gonzales more valuable to the Mariners than whatever they could get for them via trade? All that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Thursday, December 8th, 2022. This is Tidy Gonzales and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link as well as our social accounts is in the description below. Before we hop into the show, we're going to need to delay the announcement of our giveaway until tomorrow. We will get that done tomorrow, but it was a little too complicated to figure out this morning, so we'll get it all squared away for tomorrow, and we'll make that announcement during tomorrow's show. So
not hard to figure out, just labor intensive.
Sure.
But yeah, either way, it'll be done tomorrow.
Cool.
So I guess technically you have until I finish pulling the names to subscribe to be eligible. So
yeah, you guys have an extra day. Yeah, you have an extra day to subscribe to our YouTube channel to enter our giveaway, because we're going to be picking all of our winners from our subscriber list. So if you haven't subscribed yet to the Locked On Mariners YouTube channel, if you're watching us right now, do it. The button's right below our faces. Or if you're listening to us on your preferred podcast platform, head on over to YouTube. Locked On Mariners is the name of the channel. Check us out. Subscribe. Turn on alerts, all that good stuff. All right, so Xander Bogaerts signed an 11-year contract as well, just like Trey Turner did. That is very surprising. $275 million over 11 years. The AAV, just like the Turner deal, completely fine. It's just 11 years. Once again, a full no trade clause. That is well beyond what anyone expected Bogaerts to get on this market. But like I said, when Turner signed, I thought this market was going to get pretty unhinged. I didn't think it was going to be this unhinged, but here we are. I mean, Carlos Correa and Dansby Swanson are still out there. They're younger. And one could make the argument that at least one of them are better than the two guys that have signed up to this point. So I don't even know. I'm not even going to venture to guess what those guys are going to end up making on this market. Good for them, though. Good for Xander Bogaerts. Good for Trey Turner. This is awesome. Teams are spending a hell of a lot of money on these players, and dudes are getting paid this offseason. But the big thing with this is I think this benefits the Mariners potentially. There's a way that it could benefit the Mariners because now the Padres are over the luxury tax threshold, and we are of the belief that they are going to try and get back below that, and that means that they're going to have to trade someone, maybe a couple guys, and it might hurt. They're going to have to trade some players off of their major league roster. And Colby, I think there's one player in particular that makes a lot of sense for the Mariners. We talked about him a couple of episodes ago. Blake Snell. What do you think about Blake Snell?
I thought you were going to say Fernando Tatis Jr. Yes.
You have pivoted now. You're going fully in on Tatis now. But Colby, we don't want cheaters on this team.
Uh-huh. Says the guy who's going to be horribly mad when they don't give Carlos Correa $400 million. But yeah, Snell is obviously a longtime fan favorite. He's a Seattle guy, was committed to UW before he went, in the first round of his draft year to Tampa Bay. When Tampa Bay traded him the first time, a lot of Mariner fans wanted the Mariners to be in on that. They really weren't. The timeline just didn't really add up. But now he might be available. He is a 1-year rental only. That's what you're trading for. 1 year of Blake Snell, who is 30 years old, I believe. Had a really good year last year. And that was off of the back of a really good second half in 2021. So he's been a very good pitcher for, longer than 18 months, but for the last 18 months or so in particular, he's been quite good. So he is again, we know who Blake Snell is, right? He is a strikeout pitcher. He's a lefty. The one the one concern with Snell is durability. He's only made 30 starts once in his major league career. He's only gone over 130 innings pitched once in his major league career. That was both his Cy Young season, which was 5 years ago now. So it's been a while. Last year, he only had 128 innings pitched. They were very good, 128 innings, but 23, 24 starts is pretty much the most you're going to get from Snell. And most of the time, he's probably only going to go 5 and 6. So it's one of those things where, yes, Snell, when he's out there, is very, very good. He's just going to miss time. And there are going to be games where he's only going to be able to get you through 4 or 5 just because he's a strikeout pitcher and strikeouts stack up. So in a way, and I know Mariner fans cringe at this, but just stylistically, in a way, it's kind of similar to Eric Bedard. You remember Bedard, his thing in Baltimore was like, yeah, I'm going to get a lot of strikeouts, but I'm probably going to miss a month or so, and I'm probably only going to go 5 or 6. Like that. That's just what my game is. And people forget Eric Bedard was a pretty good pitcher for a while. So that's not a slight at Snell. The benefit of Snell is that he's not a terrible teammate. So that's the bonus, and that's why you're interested. But yeah, Snell would be a really interesting guy. Certainly, putting Blake Snell in the number 5 spot in your rotation makes the Mariners' rotation top 3 or 4 in baseball. Very few rotations could compete with it. You just have to be careful. It's only 1 year of Snell. It's not a multi-year thing here, and you have to plan for the idea that you're only going to get 20 to 25 starts out of him. That's just who he has been his entire career. So you have to make plans accordingly. But yeah, for those 25 starts, you're getting a legitimate number 3 starter
per spot,
or better.
Per spot tracked, he is owed $16 million this year. So that's why he is a prime candidate to be the guy that gets axed here for the Padres to clear payroll space and get back under the luxury tax threshold. So like you mentioned, he's 30 years old. He will be 31, or he actually, oh, wow, he just turned 30. He literally just turned 30 on the 4th, so 4 days ago. Happy birthday, Blake Snell, then. He had a 12.02 Ks per 9, 3.59 walks per 9, 3.38 ERA, 3.19 xERA, 2.80 FIP, 3.21 xFIP, 3.7 F4 this season in 24 starts, like you mentioned, 128 innings pitched. So yeah, considering that the Padres, I mean, like it's out in the open, right? All these teams know that the Padres need to clear space, so they know that they have to get rid of someone, and Snell is, again, that prime candidate to be the guy. So I can't imagine that teams are going to be coming to them offering too much. But what do you think it would cost the Mariners specifically to land Snell?
Yeah, I think honestly, you kind of look at what Chris Bassett cost the Mets last year. I think that's a pretty good comp. Both of them were for 1 year. Both of them are number 3s. Both of them have had injury concerns. Snell's a little bit more of a name. He does have a Cy Young award to his, on his mantle, but that's only going to carry you so far in trade negotiations. So when you kind of look at what when you look at what the Mets gave up to get Bassett, it's going to cost something, but it's not going to cost a ton. I believe they gave up JT Ginn, who's a very high profile starter, had some injury issues, but he's a really interesting arm. So it's going to cost the Mariners something. You're not going to get Blake Snell, even if the Padres are desperate to clear payroll, which they may or may not be. I think the general consensus is that they don't want to be too far over the luxury tax because they want to continue to add, as well as what we're also hearing is they don't want to be done this winter. So it seems likely they're going to try and clear some payroll. Snell is a good candidate because, again, he's only a 1 year guy. So you're probably going to move on from him anyways. All those things are going to factor in the lack of availability, I guess we'll say, for Snell, the fact that he's going to miss time. He's not going to go deep into games. All of these factor in. And I think that's why Bassett is a pretty good comp, despite Bassett being, a little bit older and a little bit less decorated, I guess, as Snell. So I think what you're looking at is somewhere in that JT Ginn mold. And for 1 year of Snell, that's, for the Mariners, that's probably, I I don't think it's quite Miller or Hancock, but I think it probably
is better than
somebody a
Dollard.
little better than Dollard.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're kind of in this weird you're in kind of this weird space here. But the one X factor here, that number 30 overall pick, sitting right there. The Padres, we know that they need to replenish their farm system. It's a way that the Padres can
Choose.
Clear $16 million and do whatever they want with that money in the draft. And I think that's interesting. I don't know if that straight up gets it done.
Yeah.
But maybe something like the 30th pick and Juan Pinto, or the 30th pick and Jonathan Clase. Well, probably not Clase because he's on the 40 man, but you get the idea.
Right.
Somebody in that general range.
Sure. Now the other thing too is like, does AJ Preller want to trade again with Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander? Because it hasn't particularly worked out too well for him in the past. So
if there's a general manager who's stupid enough to do it again, it's AJ Preller.
It's true. It's true. Very good point.
I'm not joking when I tell you AJ Preller is the dumbest guy to work in a major league front office. He's a moron. How do I know that? He just outbid nobody by $120 million for Xander Bogaerts.
That's true. Yeah, the Red Sox offer was 6 years, right? 6 years.
160.
Yeah.
And after coming in second place to Trey Turner and Aaron Judge, the Padres were just like, well, we'll just give Xander Bogaerts, a 31-year-old who's barely a shortstop, give him 11 years and $280 million. Like, cool.
Scott Boras is a wizard, man.
Hey, man, if you want to be called a wizard, just go deal with AJ Preller.
That's true. There you go.
AJ Preller is a kingmaker.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
The guy's dumb.
All right. So let's talk more about the pitching situation for the Mariners, because they do have 2 number 5s right now on the roster in Chris Flexen and Marco Gonzales. And with the way that the pitching market is going right now, one would think, hell, they should take advantage of this right now. Trade them. You might actually get something legit for them. But on the other hand, too, with the way that the pitching market is going, it might be hard for the Mariners to go upgrade as well and basically replenish their spot that they would open if they end up getting traded. So we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. So, Colby, I'm really I don't know exactly how the Mariners should maneuver the starting pitching situation. If they're not going to be able to land someone like Snell, I don't know what they should do with Chris Flexen and Marco Gonzales. I'm conflicted because you look at the pitching market, like I said, it seems like there might actually be an opportunity here to get something that can help you, that can help your major league roster if you trade Chris Flexen, who's only set to make $8 million and has been a 3-win pitcher just a year ago and can eat innings. That's going to be valuable to teams as the starting pitching market continues to dwindle, and guys who are number 4, number 5 starter, or well, more like low end 3, number 4 starters are making like $17-18 million a year. Like, teams are going to, there is going to be value with someone like Flexen, and you might actually be able to get something of use. Marco, on the other hand, maybe not as much, but I do think that there is some value that Marco holds as well. But on the flip side of that, the starting pitching market is also dwindling for the Mariners themselves. So if they were to trade one or both of these guys, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to go upgrade their rotation, or at least get someone who's about in line with Flexen or Marco's production. So what do you think they should do here at this point? Because the other thing too, right, is they were remarkably healthy in the rotation last year. That's likely not going to continue in 2023. I hope it does. I hope everyone is able to stay healthy and make all of their starts, but more likely than not, that's not going to happen because injuries just occur in the rotation. Right. So Is Chris Flexen and Marco Gonzales more valuable to the Mariners now than they are via trade?
Well, what can they get for them in trade?
Well, that's the big question, right? Yeah.
Right. If you can get something valuable for Chris Flex, like if I could get like a mid-high leverage reliever, somebody we'd probably describe as like a seventh inning guy, like I'd probably trade Flexen for him, just because that guy, those 60 innings that guy gave me are going to probably be more valuable than the 150 I might get from Flexen. But I don't think you're going to trade both. I think one of these guys probably ends up in the rotation to start the year. The trade market, we'll see how it looks. Has any prominent starting pitcher been traded yet?
Mm-mm. No, I mean, the trade market has completely shut down. Justin Hollander was talking about this, this was he said that this was the weirdest winter meetings that he's ever been a part of in terms of the trade market. It just completely died. So there's no movement right now on the trade market. And I mean, we're seeing a hell of a lot of free agents signing right now, but just no trade movement whatsoever.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit hard for the Mariners to gauge what they should do with the pitching, because, again, what you don't want to do is you don't want to move Marco and Flexen and then not be able to get somebody who's at least major league quality. I mean, you could take a shot on Matt Brash or Taylor Dollard being, good major league starters this year, but that's a pretty big risk to take. I mean, Chris Clark, the guy they drafted last year or in the Rule 5 yesterday, he's a starter in Double-A, but it sounds like he's a bullpen arm. That's the direction the Mariners want to go. So the Mariners don't have a tremendous amount of starting pitching depth, at least not, major league quality. I mean, I think if they traded Flexen and Marco and didn't replace either one, like Justice Sheffield all of a sudden re-enters the discussion, and yuck. So I don't think you can trade both. I think you have to. Do you value the money more by trading Marco, because you're not going to get a ton for Marco regardless of what the market looks like, or do you value maybe the potential asset that you could get from Chris Flexen more? Because I think Flexen is probably a better pitcher than Marco at this stage.
Agreed.
I think it's relatively close, but I just if you could tell me that Marco was going to get back to 2020 version or even 2019 version, if that's your number 5, you're in really good shape.
Yeah.
But it's been 2 years since we've seen that guy. So yeah, it's just a really tough position. You have to be open to anything, but you also have to remember that we have to replace these guys. So as much as I may want to trade Chris Flexen for, this, 45 grade prospect that we think we can turn into a 55, I still have to think about the 2023 season, right. And I have to get through that. And I can't just hope that, Dollard and Hancock and Miller and all those guys are going to be ready to give me innings at the big league level. Yeah. So it's just, they're in a really tough spot, and it's not helpful that the trade market is really quiet right now. That will pick up as, free agents continue to fly.
Yeah. Hollander said that he thinks things will start to ramp up next week on the trade front. So
yeah. Right. There's still a couple big fish out there in free agency. And then after that, it's a lot of, like mid-level and guys that are probably going to ask for $14-15 million. Like, I mean, if Taijuan Walker is getting $17 million a year, like any mid-tier starter is like, well, I'm getting at least 14-15.
Yeah.
And that's going to price some teams out. So we'll see what happens. Thankfully, it's December 8th, right? We have 78 days until pitchers and catchers even report. So no, they don't need to rush to any kind of conclusion here. They don't need to force anything, but it's going to be a tough spot. I think you have to keep one of these guys to protect yourself, though.
Yeah, Flexen at $8 million and Gonzales at $6.5 this year. Those are bargains relative to what the rest of the market is right now. Like, again, Kodai Senga, if he's getting 6-year offers and looking at just how the market has fallen so far, he might end up getting $20 million a year over that 5 to 6 year span for a guy that's entering his 30s and hasn't played a single day in Major League Baseball. That is a massive risk. I really like Kodai Senga. I think he's really interesting, and I think he will be a pretty good pitcher in Major League Baseball, but what if he's not? that's a really, really big risk that a team is going to end up taking, and I don't know if the Mariners are going to be willing to go that far with Senga. I don't know if the Mariners are going to be willing to, pay $18-19 million per year for Nathan Eovaldi. I just don't know if they're going to be willing to do that. And that's really like, if they're not going to keep Flexen and Marco, that's kind of the pitcher that I would like to see them go after. Chris Bassett, Nathan Eovaldi, Kodai Senga, that realm of starting pitchers. But it might get to a point where it doesn't really make sense. How many more wins are you actually adding for the significant uptick in cost and year commitments?
Right.
That's the thing that you're ultimately having to weigh here. And I think if we're not already there, we're getting close to a spot where it just doesn't make sense at all. And it just makes way more sense to just keep Flexen, keep Marco, maybe trade one. But honestly, again, going back to the health conversation, I might keep both and just, maybe 6-man rotation to start the year to kind of just get guys in a rhythm. Don't, overwork guys, or let Flexen go back into the bullpen. Right? Like,
yeah, so you don't have to have this done by, spring training or anything like that. And
sure,
guys get hurt in spring training all the time. And we see a few spring training trades. So you can carry both of these guys. I think it starts to get really hairy when you're carrying both of these guys on your 26-man roster on opening day. Because you only get to carry 13 pitchers. So if you're going to go 6-man rotation, you're a man down in the bullpen, and we know how much, Scott wants every available arm. So, and if Flexen is in the bullpen, you're still essentially a man down, because we saw last year, Flexen's role in the bullpen was mop-up duty. I mean, that's all they're going to use him for. That's all they trust him for. So you're kind of in a tough spot. I don't think you want to carry both. You might come to a point where you just have to DFA Marco or Flexen. I doubt it, but it is a possibility. So I think you do want to trade one of them, but I could definitely foresee a scenario where everybody's back for pitchers and catchers, and they kind of battle it out for that number 5 spot. And we just kind of see, what happens if anything falls or any trade picks up or anything like that. But again, it's December 8th. Right. We got a long time to go. So maybe the trade doesn't happen until January 20th. Like, oh, okay. As long as something gets done. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I would hope that the Mariners aren't, sitting out on the pitching market here in a few weeks and just waiting for somebody to come trade for Chris Flexen so that they could go sign, Bassett or whoever it is, right? It doesn't matter. But I hope they're not doing that, because they don't want to be, I don't want to pay him and have to carry Flexen. Like that would be cheap, right?
Right, yeah.
That's a good example of cheapness right there. But we'll see what happens. I still think Flexen is ultimately traded. Marco, I think, can kind of go either way, but if I was betting right now, I think Marco probably starts the year with the Mariners.
Okay.
Pitcher, he'll report to spring training as a Seattle Mariner. That would be my guess, but anything can happen, and we know how creative Justin and Jerry are, so we'll see what they can do.
So last night, was trying to get to sleep, and then all of a sudden, Xander Bogaerts happens. And then, 10 minutes later, look who's in Seattle, Colby. JD Martinez. Posting a picture of him at Pike Place Market. And Mariners Twitter, of course, went nuts over that. So I'll open up by saying this. I was told this morning that JD Martinez is indeed in Seattle, just not to meet with the Mariners. Sorry, guys. Yep. It's Mark Canna 2.0. So I was told that Martinez is in Seattle for a wedding, and that's all that it is. So don't think that he's meeting with the Mariners now. That doesn't necessarily mean that he won't end up signing with the Mariners eventually. It doesn't mean that he's not an interesting target for the Mariners. And you and I looked into him last night after all of this happened, because you know what, I needed a rumor. I'm desperate for a rumor, for someone to look at, here.
I was going to say it's because we're professionals and we want to give you guys the highest quality show, but I guess for Ty, it was just boredom.
Yeah, it was just boredom. I
watched every single hit JD Martinez had last year, and Ty's over here like, no, we won't talk about it. Interesting. Who really cares about you guys?
It's true.
But,
It's true. It's true. Colby is the loving one of this, the loving half of this duo here.
Exactly.
So, JD Martinez is a weird fit for the Mariners when you think about it. Like, the bat makes a lot of sense for what Jerry Dipoto described.
Really well.
It fits really well, considering what Jerry Dipoto was describing the other day in terms of a righty who can mash lefties. JD Martinez had like a 175 WRC plus against lefties last season. He was ridiculous against lefties, and also he hits pretty well outside of Fenway Park.
Yep.
Which is, kind of the thing with Xander Bogaerts, right? Like, oh, Xander hasn't been that great outside of Fenway, so you shouldn't sign him, all this stuff, right? So that was the whole conversation with that. But JD Martinez is like the opposite of that. And again, crushes lefties. The problem is he's a DH, and that's all he is.
Straight up.
He should not play a single inning in the field. So he is not the platoon option with Jared Kelenic. He's not that.
Right.
He's not the left fielder that the Mariners are going after. Really, all that fits is that he's right-handed and he mashes lefties, and that's about it.
Right. So yeah, JD Martinez again. I watched him what he did last year. Numbers wise were okay. Power outage was pretty significant. This is a guy 3-4 years ago was hitting 40 home runs, and I think he had a year where he hit like 48, if I'm not mistaken. It was all the way down to 16. It's also a bat who, is in his mid 30s, so that's typically when bat speed starts to slow down. Strikeouts are up, walks are down. Now, what's interesting about JD is that he's always been kind of a swing and miss guy. He'll whiff. He has pretty low whiff or pretty high whiff percentages, and the strikeouts the last few years have been above league average. They're not awful. They're not Joey Gallo by any stretch, but they're a little higher than you'd like from a guy who's again 34 years old. But what I watched last year, or what I watched him do last night, is go line to line. He's still cranking out a lot of doubles. There's 42 doubles last year. I think that was second in the American League. The year before, he led the American League in doubles. He's still hitting doubles, and these aren't just routine fly balls off the monster. He's going line to line. It's a ton of hits to right field. The number of times he kicked up chalk on the right field line for a double last year was probably 5 or 6 times, which is pretty impressive for a righty. He reminded me when I was watching him of having a very similar approach to that of Ty France. And when you look at the numbers that those two players put up last year, pretty much the same guy. We're talking within 10 points in every single category. So yes, do you want more power out of your DH? Yeah. If the Mariners add another Ty France to this lineup, does that help?
Also,
yes.
I want to add on the power front, he only hit 16 home runs last year, but you also, factor in the doubles. And going by park factors, if he played every game in T-Mobile Park last year, which obviously that's not possible, but if he played every game in T-Mobile Park last year, he would have hit 23 home runs.
Yeah. I still think he's a 25 homer guy. But I just look at him and honestly, based on what I saw yesterday and what the numbers are telling me, he looks like Ty France. Could the Mariners use another Ty France bat in this lineup? Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be very helpful. Again, the issue is that he cannot play the field.
Yeah.
Not that he shouldn't. He cannot. He's worse than Jesse Winker in left field. It's a disaster. So you can bring him in. And by the way, at his age and because of his lack of versatility, he's probably only going to get a 1-year deal. And when you look at DHs, older DHs, DH only types, the comp is Nelson Cruz. In the last few years, Cruz has signed 1 or 2-year deals at $12 to $13 million. That's probably what JD Martinez is going to get. The way it could work, and again, he's not in Seattle. Let's reiterate that. He's not in Seattle to talk to the Mariners. So let's not assume this is going to happen. But the way it could work is if the Mariners went out and got a Brian Reynolds or a Randy Arozarena, right? And then they could have JD Martinez as just their full-time DH, or they could do some things. And then they can still go out and get a quality fourth outfielder and just kind of use the 26-man spot as essentially at the DH. So it could work. JD Martinez fits in this lineup if you go get a full-time left fielder. If not, then you're kind of blocking the idea that Jerry put out there that they want 4 outfielders who all cycle through the DH and play a ton.
Right.
JD Martinez does not fill that category. In fact, JD Martinez prevents you from doing that. So
Right.
I think the only way it works is if the Mariners go out and get an everyday, no doubt about it, corner outfielder. And right now, after Yoshida signed extremely quickly with the Red Sox yesterday, that market you're probably going to have to find that guy in trade if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, let's talk about Yoshida real quick before we hop off, because I know there's a lot of questions about how that went down, if the Mariners were in, why did the Mariners not get him, all that stuff. Thing that I've heard, and this is now starting to make the rounds, and it's pretty obvious when you see how quickly this went, because he got posted literally 2 days ago. Like the day before he signed with the Red Sox, he got posted by his team in Japan. He didn't even engage with any other teams. He didn't negotiate with any other teams. He just wanted to be a Red Sox. And it just lined up perfectly that the Red Sox wanted him, and they were willing to pay that for him. I've never seen a player sign that quickly after being posted. Never. I've never seen it.
I don't think it's ever happened.
I don't think it's ever happened. Yeah.
No.
I'm not saying that there was tampering necessarily, but I think that he just straight up wanted to be a Red Sox. And that was it.
Let's just put it this way. If 5 years from now we find out there was tampering, I wouldn't be surprised.
Sure.
But I do think what ultimately happened is that Yoshida wanted the Red Sox. That was the team he wanted to go to, and when they approached him with a pretty good offer, pretty sizable offer,
he got the Seiya Suzuki deal.
Yeah. A little bit more, I think. I think he got $5 in 90. Suzuki got $5 in 85. So just $1 million more a year, but yeah, essentially the same deal. So I think that was his number one team. I think once the Red Sox said that they were interested, he was done. He wasn't going to negotiate with other teams. He wanted the Red Sox. And again, this is one of those things. Money can't just save you. You just can't say, we'll just pay more than that team was willing to pay.
Well,
That's
look at the Padres and Aaron Judge, right? Apparently the Padres offered Aaron Judge $400 million, and he said, nope. And he's from that area, too.
Yeah. I'll take 360 and stay in New York. And again, same thing with Philadelphia with Trey Turner, right? Phillies offered 340, 350
and there's always going to be that special allure of legacy teams, right? The Red Sox, the Yankees, all the Dodgers, etc. The legacy teams are always going to earn the favor of certain free agents.
Right. And by the way, this year it seems especially true. We've heard quite a few at least 3 that I've heard of players who were offered more money, better contracts by just about any definition, and they chose to go somewhere else where they were going to make less money. Andrew Heaney is another one. Andrew Heaney, yep. Andrew Heaney, Trey Turner, and Aaron Judge. It's not always about the money, guys. Sometimes guys just
all 3 of those players very equal to one another.
Yes, obviously. Right, but sometimes it's not about. Sometimes it's about, hey, we think we can do this for you and get your career on track. We think you're a really good fit, X, Y, Z. There are a lot of reasons why teams choose or why players choose a team. Money is usually the biggest one, but it doesn't outweigh everything. It's not the catch-all that a lot of people seem to think it is. And, the Aaron Judge thing proved it, and the Yoshida thing proved it. Because I think, honestly, if the Mariners were going to go to him and be like, I'll give you 120, he probably would have picked the Red Sox. He clearly wanted to be a Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
So how much money do you have to give a guy to give up on where he wants to go?
Yeah. What's the tax on that, basically? So, all right. So tomorrow, a little programming note. Since we didn't do a mailbag episode on Monday, we're going to do it on Friday. We're going to replace Fan Fiction Friday with Mailbag Monday. Then we'll get back to our regular schedule next week, barring anything crazy happening. So Twitter. I think we'll do Twitter this week for mailbag questions. So we'll put out a tweet on Twitter, and you can respond to that tweet with your mailbag question, and we'll try to answer as many as we can on tomorrow's show. But that's going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Dan Gonzales. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzales, that's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast featuring the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.